Hello YouTube. Let me tell you today about the mysterious mountains and lakes of Pamir, about the amazing lakes of the Gorno-Badakhshan Autonomous Region, and some very strange phenomena. Hot springs and fabulous lakes are one of the richest of the Tajikistan nature. By the way, the official English name of the autonomous region is the Badakhshan Mountainous Autonomous Region. The Pamir Mountains are located in the heart of Central Asia, mostly in Tajikistan. The greatest, mysterious, lost in the wilds of Asia, the mountains of the Pamir have always stirred minds. Sharp peaks seemed unattainable, deep rocky gorges impregnable, winding roads heading to the clouds unreliable. These uprising mountain peaks remember the Persian kings, the mysterious Bactria, I've mentioned in my other videos, and the troops of Alexander the Great, and of Tamerlan and Babur, Marco Polo, and dozens of pioneers of glacier and mountain exploration. Roads laid over the precipices served as routes for caravans carrying lapis lazuli and rubies and Chinese silk. Prior to the wide Himalayas exploration, it was the Pamir that was referred to as the roof of the world. The gigantic mountains of Asia, tight like a ring around it, the Himalayas, the Karakorum, the Hindu Kush, the Gisar Alai, the Tian Shan, and the Kunlun. The Pamir Mountains divide Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. There are only two ways to access the mountains: from Dushanbe, Tajikistan's capital, or Osh in Kyrgyzstan. That's what I know. If there are other ways, tell me. But bring your own tent, just in case. The Pamir Mountains are the second highest mountain range to contain human settlements. In the Pamir, they usually distinguish several sites based on the landscape specifics. Most often, speaking of the Pamir, they mean the Gorno-Badakhshan or Kukhiston-Badakhshan region of Tajikistan. This is where the main part of this mountain system is located, and Khorog is considered to be the tourist center of the Pamir. In Kyrgyzstan, the northern Trans-Alai ridge is located. The Pamir Mountains in China are usually called Eastern Pamir, Chinese Pamir, or the Kashgar Mountains, and often are referred to as part of Kunlun. In Afghanistan, the spurs of the southern Pamir are located in the province of Badakhshan. The Wakhan Corridor, a narrow flat valley bounded by high ridges, runs in valleys of the Wakhan and Panj rivers. The border between Tajikistan and Afghanistan goes along it. Approximately 205,000 people live in the Pamir Mountains. Until now, the origin of the name of the Pamir mountain system has been controversial among researchers. So according to one hypothesis, Pamir comes from the word Pa-i-mir, the name of the sacred Mount Meru, which according to Indian mythology is the center of the world. According to another hypothesis, Pamir comes from the name of the sun god of the ancient Iranians, Mir or Mitr. For this reason, Pamir can mean the foot of the sun, that is the mountainous country in the east, from behind which the sun rises. There is no definite answer to the question of the origin of the Pamir people. The history of this ethnic group dates back more than 2 millennia. Given that the inhabitants of Badakhshan belong to the Caucasian race, some researchers are inclined to believe that the Pamiris are descendants of the ancient Aryans who remained in the mountains during the Indo-European migration and subsequently mixed with the local population. However, there is no historical evidence for this theory. According to most experts, several Eastern Iranian tribes moved to the Pamir separately from each other and at different times. Interestingly, their closest relatives were the legendary Scythians, an ancient ethnic group that created a huge empire in the 7th to 4th century before Common Era, stretching from the Crimea to southern Siberia, and you can see more about them in my other videos. I pay attention to that little-known history. In the period between the 1st and 7th centuries Common Era, the Pamir Mountains were part of the legendary Silk Route. In the 2nd century, Ptolemy made reference to the Pamirs in his work, Guide to Geography. The Chinese invaded the Pamirs in the year 747 Common Era, but their stay was short-lived. Famous European explorer Marco Polo may have traversed the Pamir Mountains on his way to China. Maybe that's where he saw the dragons too. But the first European to document his exploration of the region was a Portuguese Jesuit missionary named Benedict de Goes in 1603. The Pamirs were also surveyed by the legendary English explorer Ney Elias about 2 centuries later. Throughout the history of the Pamirs, various Turkic-speaking tribes, the Chinese, Arabs, Mongols, as well as the Sassanid and Timurid dynasties tried to conquer this region, but none of them stayed in the highlands to rule a handful of tribes. Therefore, even the nominally conquered Pamiris continued to live peacefully for a long time, as they used to. The situation changed in the 19th century when Russia and Britain, the empires, were actively fighting for the influence in Asia. By the 19th century, the exploration of the Pamir Mountains was mostly conducted by Russians, for whom many of the mountain peaks in the region are named. In 1928, Soviet explorers drew the first topographical map of the northwestern Pamirs after visiting the Fedchenko Glacier. Shortly thereafter, in the 1930s, the Soviets established an observatory on the glacier, which has since managed to provide a great deal of scientific data on the physical properties of the Pamir Mountains. Today, the Pamirs are a growing tourist attraction, visited by people who are interested in traversing the mountain range, visiting ancient shrines, seeing petroglyphs too, climbing some of its peaks, and even whitewater rafting on its rivers. The Pamirs, it's quite rich in a variety of picturesque reservoirs, differing in color, composition of waters, and method of formation. Flowing lakes are fed by meltwater and spring water and contain significant amounts of fresh water. Drainless lakes feed only on precipitation and melted ice, are seasonal in nature, and often change their outlines. There are few large lakes in the Pamirs, but several relatively large ones deserve special attention. They are known not for their size, but for their uniqueness, beauty, and the number of legends and phenomena that attract the attention of travelers, researchers, and local historians. However, for local residents and animals, these places are home and natural sources of livelihood in extremely harsh climatic conditions. It is noteworthy that fishing were organized on the lake, for example, for the first time in the Pamirs. Once upon a time, the only yak breeding farm in the USSR was located there. Now only 24 caravans remain from the state farm, in which cattle breeders still live, and the pitiful ruins of incomprehensible buildings. The lowest temperature in Central Asia was recorded in that area, minus 63 degrees Celsius. In my books, I have described that mysterious Lake Sarez and UFOs observed there by Soviet military, as well as I talked about the lake in my lectures and videos on the subject of UFOs and USOs in the USSR. And I will not repeat it here, but just remember this. The alpine lake Sarez, located at an altitude of more than 2,400 meters in region, was nicknamed the Sleeping Dragon and the Pearl of the Pamirs for a reason. It was formed in 1911 because of a powerful earthquake that wiped out 3 mountain villages, after one of which this lake was named, Sarez. Well, Sarez is located in the area of high seismicity, and therefore it is considered to be a time bomb. Scientists calling the lake a sleeping dragon assume that in the event of its breakthrough, parts of the territory of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Afghanistan will be flooded. But there is more. From the north, the granite slopes of the Bazardarinsky Ridge come close to Lake Yashilkul, leaving a narrow strip of shore several meters wide. Moving along this coast toward the blockage, you can reach a semi-abandoned and lined with worn flat slabs ancient trail. Soviet geologists Laskutov and Chidiya discovered here a granite block measuring 10 by 4 meters with Arabic characters inscribed on it. In terms of the modern calendar, the inscription dates back to 1193 to 1194 Common Era. The fact that the area of the lake Yashilkul has long been visited by people is also evidenced by the religious site located near the mouth of the Alichu River and surrounded by dilapidated mazars. This is the Isiku Bulak Had hydrogen sulfide spring. The water temperature in it is 71 degrees Celsius, and it consists of 4 griffons scattered along the foot of the granite massif. The abundance of traces of extinct springs indicates the duration of the existence of this system. Yashilkul is a freshwater lake in Gorno-Badakhshan Autonomous Province in southeast Tajikistan, about 130 kilometers east of the provincial capital of Khorug. Lying in the upper Gunt valley of the Pamir Mountains, he has an area of 3,600 hectares, that's about 8,900 acres. With a maximum depth of 52 meters, it lies 1.5 kilometers from a similar lake, Bulunkul, both of which are surrounded by other wetlands, as well as sand and pebble plains. The famous Soviet geographer Korzhenevsky, who visited these places in 1923, according to local residents, recorded a very curious legend associated with a small hook-shaped peninsula, Kampirchik, on the northern shore of Lake Yashilkul. Here it goes. About 300 years ago, there was a large and rich village on the site of the current lake. One evening, a tired wanderer came there and asked for shelter and food. But no matter how many yards he went around, no one let him in. Finally, he knocked on the door of the last poorest house. Here he was sheltered and fed by a lonely old woman, having cooked for him the last chicken she had. Early in the morning, the wanderer got up and said to her, "Kampirchik, immediately leave here for the mountain." She obeyed and did as he said. As soon as she climbed the rocks, the earth trembled terribly and water gushed out, swallowing the village with its entire population. It is worth mentioning another common legend that a huge animal lives in the lake called Tuyasu by the Kyrgyz, water camel. We find this information both from the Chinese traveler Xuanzang, who visited there in the 7th century Common Era, and from the ethnographers of our time, Andreev and Stanishevsky. But this information has not yet been verified or confirmed. Because of the harsh conditions in the mountains, with rare rainfall and cold winters, plus its incredible heights, The landscape of the Pamir Mountains is pretty barren, but you can still encounter some incredible wildlife. Hikers can hope to spot brown bears, wolves, marmots, and rarest of all, snow leopards, because they're able to camouflage so well with the snowy landscape of the mountains. This would be hard to spot. But leaving the usual life forms aside, there are other forms of cryptids out there. So I will tell you more about the cryptozoology of the area and the fascinating cryptids that inhabit the mountains and live in legends. Also, Gorno-Badakhshan has more than 10,000 petroglyphs and pictographs, several dating from the late Paleolithic period. That would be 8,000 years before Common Era. Most are, fortunately for their preservation, located some distance from the main roads, and many villages are unaware of their presence. So some petroglyphs are not defaced. The first traces of civilization in the Pamirs go back more than 20,000 years. Some 50 human settlements from the Stone Age have been found in the eastern Pamir. Cave paintings from this period can be seen near the village of Giarti Gumbes, 40 kilometers south of Murgab, just off the main road to Khorog. By the way, a ritual fire worshipping site can be found at the lake Yashil Kul and the estuary of the major Marjanai River near the village of Bulumkul. Another fire temple can be seen in the village of Bogiv, 9 kilometers from the regional center of Khorog. So I gave you enough. If you ever travel in that area, you will know where to look. Oh, there is so much more I'd like to tell you about Central Asia and areas like the one that I described today. And I will in the future. So if you like my research, please support me through the links you'll find in the description to this video. Please like my videos, subscribe to my channel. Thank you for your attention to my work.